Our interview with President Macron came just 1 week after the U.S., France, and Britain launched a coordinated strike on the Assad regime in Syria. But on the eve of the state visit, there are still big issues that divide Presidents Macron and Trump. I came to the Élysée Palace to talk with the French leader. Built in 1722 for a French nobleman, it was first used by the President of France in 1848. And the interview took place in the Salon Doré, the Golden Room, the French equivalent of the Oval Office. Mr. President, thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you very much for being here in my office. You're welcome.
Let's start with the state visit and your address to Congress. What message will you bring about relations between our two nations and what role the world would like to see the U.S. play?
Look, first of all, I'm very honored to come to your country at the invitation of President Trump and have the opportunity to discuss with him and go indeed to the Congress for this address. My objective is to highlight a long-term history between our two countries based on values. We are very much attached to the same values, and especially liberty and peace. And I think the US today has a very strong role to play for peace in different regions of the world, and especially Middle East. And I think is one of the last resort player for this peace and for multilateralism. So I will advocate for multilateralism in front of the Congress for that, which means playing all together in order to reduce the influence and the power of some rogue states and very tough dictators, and obviously fight against terrorism together.
Many foreign leaders over the last year have come to Washington, but this will be the first state visit of the Trump presidency. How do you explain your special relationship with the president? And some have called you the Trump whisperer.
Look, I think we have a very special relationship because both of us are probably the maverick of the systems on both sides. I think President Trump's election was unexpected in your country, and probably my election was unexpected in my country. And we are not part of the classical political system. Second, I think we are very much in line on some very critical issue of this world, and especially counter-terrorism and fight against ISIS. Third, I think we have a very strong personal relation based on the different meetings we had, and especially the visits that your president gave to my country for Bastille Day in 2017.
I want to go back to your first meeting and the famous first handshake between the two of you at the NATO summit in May of last year. It lasted 6 agonizing seconds, and you said afterwards it was not an innocent moment, that it was a moment of truth. How important do you think it was to establish that you were not going to be pushed around?
Look, I think it was a very direct and, yes, a very direct and lucid moment. When I say it's not innocent, it's to say we were sitting together and we had this shake hand, and it was to say now we will work together.
But you also made it clear that you weren't going to let him...
Normally he's a specialist, basically, to take you with. So I was very, I mean, seeing Prime Minister Abe and some of the different victims, I resisted. But in fact, I mean, it was a very natural moment, I have to say, and a very friendly moment. Don't worry.
As you know, the special counsel is investigating President Trump. This week, the former FBI Director James Comey said that he was morally unfit to be president. Does this hurt President Trump's credibility and his effectiveness on the world stage?
I don't think so, and to me, there is no impact. I mean, people of the United States voted for President Trump and elected him. You have your system. You are a free country with a rule of law, which is, I mean, very great. I have the same in my country. This is an actual democracy with judges, with media, and with all the controversies. But here in this office, I'm not the one to judge and in a certain way to explain to your people what should be your president, or to consider that because of these controversies or because of these investigations, your president is less credible for me, for my people, and for the rest of the world. I mean, I'm here to deal with the President of the United States and the people of the United States elected Donald Trump.
Do you ever wonder whether he will serve his full term?
I never wonder that. I mean, I work with him because I work with him because both of us are very much at the service of our countries on both sides. And for me, that's why, even when we have some disagreements on climate and on some issues, I think the most important thing is to, just to remind that we are at the service of our people. That's our legitimacy. And this service is to work for this very long-term history for freedom, for defense of our values. And that's, Lafayette came when you decided to be a free country. He came for France. He helped the United States to exist. During the First World War, during the Second World War, when we were attacked, when our liberty was attacked, thousands of young people came here and died here for my country. That's it. That's the story of our relationship. And President Trump and myself are, whatever happens, in the line of this history. That's why my gift to your president will be an oak taken in a very symbolic place, especially for your Marines in north of France, that together, we will put in his garden, because that's for me a great symbol of this long-term relationships.
You talk about the United States as a country of last resort. Your relationship with President Trump was a bit strained this week after the attack on Syria. Mr. Trump has made it clear that he wants to pull out.
We'll be coming out of Syria very soon. Let the other people take care of it now.
After the missile strike, you said, we convinced him it was necessary to stay for the long term. The White House pushed back. He wants U.S. forces to come home as quickly as possible. So, Mr. President, which is it? Is President Trump going to pull out of Syria as soon as ISIS is defeated, or have you persuaded him to stay to help stabilize the situation there?
It's not automatically U.S. forces, but that's U.S. diplomacy, and that's your president. We will have to build the new Syria afterwards. And that's why I think the U.S. role is very important to play. Why? I will be very blunt. The day we will have finished this war against ISIS, if we leave, definitely and totally, even from a political point of view, we will leave the floor to the Iranian regime, Bashar al-Assad and these guys. And they will prepare the new war. They will fuel the new terrorists. So my point is to say, even after the end of the war against ISIS, the US, France, our allies, all the countries of the region, even Russia and Turkey, will have a very important role to play in order to create this new Syria and ensure Syrian people to decide for the future.
Let's do what we call a lightning round. Quick questions, quick answers. When the President announced new tariffs on aluminum and steel for the European Union, you said that we will not negotiate with a gun pointed at our head.
Yeah.
There is now a May 1st deadline. Who is going to blink, the President Trump or you?
I hope he will. He will not implement these new tariffs, and he will decide for an exemption for the European Union. You don't make trade war with your lie.
But he has said that he is going to implement.
He said exemption till May 1st. Let's see what he will decide on May 1st. I just say, where are your priorities? You cannot make a trade war with your lie. I'm an easy guy. I'm very simple. I'm straightforward. It's too complicated. If you make war against everybody, you make trade war against China, trade war against Europe, war in Syria, war against Iran. Come on, it doesn't work. You need a lie. We are the ally.
Iran. The president has a May 12th deadline for deciding whether or not to continue to lift the sanctions on Tehran. Would it be a mistake for the president to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal?
Is this agreement perfect, and this JCPOA a perfect thing for our relationship with Iran? No. But for nuclear, what do you have as a better option? I don't see it. What is the what-if scenario, or your plan B? I don't have any plan B for nuclear against Iran. So that's a question we will discuss. But that's why I just want to say, on nuclear, let's preserve this framework, because it's better than a sort of North Korean type of situation. Second, I'm not satisfied with the situation with Iran. I want to fight against ballistic missiles. I want to contain their influence in the region. So my point is to say, don't leave now the JCPOA as long as you have not a better option for nuclear, and let's complete it with ballistic missile and a regional containment.
President Trump appears close to holding a summit meeting with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Do you think that his threats, fire and fury, his insults, little rocket man, however unconventional they may be, brought Kim to the table?
Look, I don't know. I'm not an expert about, I would say, the rationality of North Korean president. And I think we always have to be very careful about this kind of declarations. But I think the pressure he put in this region, plus the Chinese role in this region, because President Trump worked very closely with President Xi, was useful. But now we will have to deliver.
During President Putin's visit here to France, you called him out on Russian interference in your election. What do you think of Vladimir Putin?
I think he's a very strong man. He's a strong president. He wants a great Russia. People are proud with his policy. He is extremely tough with minorities and his opponents, with an idea of democracy which is not mine. But I have a permanent discussion with him, even if we are disaligned on a lot of things. He is strong and smart. But don't be naive. He is obsessed by interferences in our democracies. That's why I do believe that we should never be weak with President Putin. When you are weak, he uses it. And it's fine. That's a game. But he made a lot of fake news. He has a very strong propaganda. And he intervenes everywhere around Europe and the US to fragilize our democracies, because he thinks it's good for this country. I respect him. I know him. I'm lucid. I want to work with him knowing everything about that.